Hello. Let us start now checking the Caro defense e4 c6. Well, the logics behind this move is that black wants to fight for the center, playing d5 next, and in comparison with French defense, e6, d5, then he wants to keep his bishop on c8, open, so to say. So the idea is that at some point on, in most of the lines, by far the most of the lines, so black wants first to develop the bishop and only this white color bishop, and only then to play e6. And so in a way, the idea is to develop harmoniously, not to have a single piece which might be inactive. But of course, also it has some drawbacks, because e6 is also helping, developing quicker, maybe helping to make short castle, even though, as you noticed, very rarely black is making short castle in French defense, making it quickly. But anyways, I would say that nowadays it's actually becoming more and more popular, Caro, even among the top players. And as I understand the modern state of theory, white is actually struggling to prove a clear advantage. I mean, there is no line where, black is experiencing a real problem so far. The minus is maybe that is a minus compared to French defense, that white has even more options. White really has a big amount of different setups and with some venom. But let's try to analyze it one by one. So first, this lesson we start with, I would say sidelines, even though some of them are very serious, because in any case, when white is choosing a sideline after first e4, it's always you have to be alert, because it's white and he's playing the most aggressive move e4. So some of those sidelines are pretty dangerous, and in any case, if you want to play black Caro defense, you have to know those lines well. The main lines are d4 followed by knight c3 or knight d2, or d4, d5, e5. Those are established main lines. But there are other options here. I cannot cover everything. Of course, there are moves even like b3 or d3, but that shouldn't cause too much problem to black. So let's say knight f3 is one of the quite fashionable way of playing nowadays, d5, and now knight c3. This is a system which becomes quite popular nowadays among top players. Even strangely enough, there is a move d3, which for some reason starts to be quite popular also. Frankly, I just cannot believe this move can really give white any realistic chances to get an advantage. And my personal opinion that the rise of popularity of this move d3 is connected only with the fact that computer starts to sort of like it and give a small plus to white, but I have no doubt that it doesn't give anything for white, so it's not going to cause a problem. I think actually g6, if you want to play more complicated games, then g6 is a very valid option. You just want to play bishop g7 and so on. Normally white tries to gain space with e5, bishop g7, d4, and then f6. It's a very straightforward way of playing, trying to fight for the, immediately for the center. As far as I understand, it's a very decent line for black, according to theory. But frankly, I wouldn't mind just to take on e4, takes on e4, queen d1, king d1. And here computer gives a very small plus to white. Okay, let me be arrogant and disagree with the computer. I'm sure that with accurate play, black shouldn't have any problem in this endgame. So yeah, it's your choice if you know with black whether to play g6 or to go to this endgame and analyze it a bit, maybe to. But all in all, I personally think that this endgame is just equal. Anyway, d3 shouldn't cause you too many troubles. But knight c3, yeah, that is more serious, I would say. So the idea behind it I will explain you later, because d4 probably is the main move. Bishop g4 is actually a very solid and safe choice. I mean, that is always playable, and if you're just happy with the Caro-Kann type of positions and you're not afraid of giving up to bishops, I can recommend you here. There is not much theory, so the white's idea is to play h3 now. And the point is that, of course, bishop h5 would have been great to leave this bishop and then to play e6 later. But after ed5, g4, just the game becomes very direct. Check, knight e5, rook c8, d4. And it seems that here black is experiencing some problems, because also there is this typical h4, h5 idea coming. So this I would not recommend you to do. So probably after h3, you rather take on f3, queen takes f3, e6, and now white usually plays bishop e2, followed by d3 very often, castles, and well, he has two bishops. And in general, in practice, I see that white has quite good statistics here. Normally, because not really because he's better, maybe because it's just a bit easier to play with two bishops. Anyway, yeah, if being black, I wouldn't be too worried here also. So there are many different setups. For instance, possible to play knight d7, and sometimes white already plays d4. So then another setup is at some point trying to get g6, bishop g7, but most common is bishop c5. So black just activates his bishop, wants to stop d4, and then you can check games. Well, even if white is a bit better here, but it's a complicated game and there is nothing too bad for black definitely here. But if you want to equalize more, you know, to play for equality, not just more straightforward way, d takes e4 is a move, knight takes e4. And the whole idea of this move further, you know, instead of having knight on f3, instead of the pawn on d4, which will be the main position, we are going to analyze in our next lesson. Here, the problem is that bishop f5, the most common move, is not working so well anymore, because knight g3, bishop g6, h4, and after h6, white has knight e5. I mean, with the pawn on d4, white was just trying to play knight f3 first, and then knight d7, for instance, stopping knight e5. Now knight e5, and here white is better. So this is, yeah, this I do not recommend you to play bishop f5. Then very possible to play knight d7, which would lead probably to knight d7 lines, but which are also not so easy for black. So white has certain chances for opening advantage. Therefore, now most of the time knight f6 is played in this position. And the very important discovery of maybe last 10 years in this Caro-Kann, knight f6, that actually after taking on f6, e takes f6, this structure is actually much much better than it looks for black, because it looks like, you have double pawns and white is just having an extra pawn in the center. And it was always considered to be sort of playable for black, but definitely slightly worse till the end of the game. But now computers came, they reassess in general lots of typical positions in chess, and especially with those double pawns. By the way, if we are talking about the Berlin endgame, the famous Berlin endgame, also there was a clear reassessment of the double pawns, the positions having such double pawns, c7, c6, or f7, f6, like here, they are much more interesting than they look. So here, so white would normally play d4, that would transpose to the variation main line with d4 and knight c3, knight takes c4, knight f6. So this we will consider in our next lesson. But for now, I can tell that's the general verdict that black is doing fine here. Or let's say white can play bishop c4 first, and maybe queen e2 check to use this chance to, to bother black with a check. But actually, I don't think there is any problem in this endgame after queen e7, at least according to the games. Black is able to equalize here. So that is why the system knight f6 became quite popular lately, and white made quite a number of tries in this position, trying to take on f6, rarely with success. So lately, the white's last attempt is to play queen e2. Again, frankly, I find it a bit hard to believe that with this move you can achieve a real advantage, but there is a certain theoretical discussion nowadays going on with this move. Maybe partly the popularity of this move is based on the fact that white is hoping for knight bd7, a very logical and solid continuation, but just delivering knight d6 mate. Okay, I'm joking, of course, but that's a trap which you must know in the Caro-Kann defense. But normally, knight takes e4 is played. Actually, knight a6 I find quite an interesting move. I saw somebody playing it, and maybe it also makes sense. So the idea is that already now, if white takes on f6, black wants to take with a g-pawn. And, it's also not such a bad system, but especially with this queen on e2, which is blocking the bishop on f1, let's say d3, bishop g4, and maybe black is actually also doing quite okay here. But normally black takes on e4, which is logical, queen takes e4, and now for some reason, most of the time black is playing queen d5 now, and there is some theory like queen f4, main move, let's say queen f5, queen e3, sacrificing the pawn on c2 and so on. Okay, some theory, you can check it, lots of games of good players, strong players on this, but to me, frankly, knight d7 looks much more logical. Just trying to develop knight f6 and getting the bishop out from c8. I don't know, bishop c4 is what they try to do here. I think the idea is this, so knight f6, knight e5, just to force black to play e6, because of course you cannot take the queen, bishop f7 mate, and then queen e2. But I frankly, I don't think this is too dangerous for black. So to me, in this knight f3, d5, knight c3 system is definitely playable with white. I mean, if you want to play it with white, it's very solid, very safe. Not much theory to learn, so an interesting choice. Quite an interesting choice, but objectively also not something black will spend days and nights and weeks trying to find what to do against it. By the way, there is another very sharp line to play knight f6, e5, knight e4. There's another option playing like this, but it's getting very tricky and complicated here. So, knight f3, d5, I don't think it's a refutation of Caro-Kann. Then there is a so-called Panov attack, which is c4. Or you can start, you can get there via d4, d5, move further, and then take on d5 and c4. That's another way of getting there. But I want to start analyzing it via c4 move further, just that in this position to show you the additional line, which is c takes d5, which white has. Okay, now the idea is that if you take with the queen, then knight c3, at least, I don't know if it's really giving a big advantage to white, but at least he's developing with tempest. So that's why I would recommend you knight f6, to play knight f6, trying to take on d5 with a knight. And now, so let's say if knight c3, knight takes d5, this is pretty harmless. So usually the white's idea is connected with some strange checks, queen a4 check or bishop d5 check. So the idea is to try to play knight c3 and to try to keep this pawn on d5. But you can check the theory, let's say like this, black is playing then bishop b7, finally he's getting back the pawn, sooner or later, and or queen a4 check, knight bd7, knight c3. There is some theory, you need to know something here, but all in all, it's considered to be pretty harmless. So what usually black is doing here is just playing g6, followed by bishop g7. So he doesn't need to take back this pawn immediately. Yeah. So he's slowly taking it back, especially considering the fact that white has to put his pieces in very strange positions sometimes just to be able to not to give this d5 pawn back in 2-3 moves. For instance, a6. Now black is threatening to play b5. So let's say castle it's just bad because b5. And black has intermediate knight b6, attacking the queen, protecting the rook, followed by ab. So that's why white's main move is a very strange queen a3, just to be able to take on b5 after, if b5, bishop b5 already. But now black has a few ways of having enough counterplay. If knight b6, queen b3, well, you can analyze it. Actually, engines are saying here that there is more than one way for black to be fine. For instance, b6 is a very solid move. Castles bishop b7, so black is now finally getting b5. Let's say rook e1, b5, bishop b3, rook e8. You see a very strange queen on a3, bishop on b3. Of course, black still needs to take back the pawn on d5. But even if white manages sometimes to keep it, then black simply starts to have a very good compensation because of this queen on a3 and bishop on b3. So that, again, you need to know the theory here, but I don't think it's going to be any problem. So d4, this is a classical so-called Panov attack, at least in my time when I studied chess. I'm not sure nowadays young players, they know all those names, even of actually a strong chess player, Grandmaster Panov, was quite a serious player in the Soviet Union, I think sometime in the 50s, 60s. So he liked to play it a lot. But nowadays, it's becoming really not fashionable because, there are too many ways for black to be okay. That is a problem. In most of the opening nowadays, if black knows very well and prepares well with the machine, he probably has good chances to equalize out of the opening. But here it's like every line is fine, and that makes it the c4 system, I think not very promising. So knight f6, knight c3, even though of course again it's playable and maybe the certain advantage that it's not so fashionable, it gives white some chances, to get the opening advantage. But here, knight c6 is the most straightforward and considered to be the toughest, so to say, move, very direct. But there are two other ways. First of all, there is a g6 move, which was always considered to be a little bit dubious because of queen b3. That is the point, that it's somehow getting a bit difficult for black to, there is too much pressure on the d5 pawn. Because if, let's say, bishop g5, black can actually even play bishop g7 according to theory, but also knight e4 is okay. And if black develops bishop g7 castles, he should be definitely fine. So queen b3. And now, actually, I'm not sure that after e6, very strange, of course, to play g6 and e6, but also white's queen on b3 is not doing so well. Not clear if it's very well placed. So I'm not so sure that it's white is really better, can prove any advantage after e6. But normally black just plays bishop g7, c takes d5, castle. And then, okay, white has to develop still and to try to keep the d5 pawn. So it's not an easy task. And black has to create quick counterplay, obviously, because if white is playing correctly, like trying to play bishop e2, knight e2, knight f4, it's not easy to get the pawn, at least in the near future. But you see black is using his development advantage to try to play very active. For instance, a5 is a very interesting move, I think, according to series. And black is trying to play a4, knight a6 in a very quick counterplay. White has chances to fight for advantage here, but the state of modern theory is that black probably has enough play to equalize. Or another way of playing is bishop e2, trying to get bishop to f3 just to protect this pawn. Because if white just develops knight f3 in the most logical way, then probably black would just play knight d7 followed by knight b6 and get this d5 pawn back with the perfect position. So bishop e2, and again, if knight a6 is the main move, bishop f3, followed by knight e2, and for instance, one of the main lines here is queen b6, and then after exchanging the queens on b6, black is playing knight b4, rook d8. You need to know the theory here, of course. It still goes further, but I think that it's also very interesting system, the most straightforward way of playing. White really has to prove that, he has at least little something here. But of course, you need to know some forced lines. Knight c6 is very solid. It's a very solid move, and also I would say not such a not so difficult to play after knight c6. And since already quite a number of years, white is struggling here to find an advantage. So I think maybe the most interesting move is bishop g5, because the other plan is knight f3, but then bishop g4. Here, the game gets pretty direct. Takes on d5. So you see, not only for Caro, but also in general, for the opening strategy of black, in general, in all those classical positions, if black can manage to get out his bishop first and then to play e6, that's always better than playing e6, leaving the bishop on c8. Even though, of course, the second choice is also very solid. But here, now if black manages e6, bishop e7, with the bishop, active on g4, white will have, no chance for opening advantage. So that's why it considers to be the only way for white to try to hope for something is to play queen b3. And actually here, the old main line is bishop takes f3, and that's, by the way, how I played myself very long time ago, already almost 30 years ago, in Linares 1993 against Anatoly Karpov. You can check this game. I even almost managed to win it with black, but actually knight b6 is maybe also doing fine. Here you need to, of course, to study a bit to check this position with the engine, but in general, I think that there is no real danger here. So it's your choice. Knight b6 is also possible, probably d5. At least this is how the main line goes. Takes, knight d4. I think the idea is that if queen d1, then black is trying to play e5 here. That is the idea of black. And if bishop b5 check, knight d7, and this position g6, bishop g7, white is, has some initiative. Maybe he'll take the pawn on b7, but his pawn structure is compromised. And again, I think according to the theory, black is doing fine. But also bishop takes f3. A very direct line, gf3, e6. Now queen takes b7, knight takes d4. Bishop b5 check, pretty forced. Everything, forced in the sense that otherwise white can only be worse. So takes, queen c6 check, forcing king e7. Queen takes b5, queen d7. Now, let's say this endgame, knight d5, queen d5, queen d5, e d5. So actually that is the endgame we had with Anatoly Karpov in 93. And yes, white is usually trying to play bishop e3, long castle, and try to put pressure on the d5 pawn. Pre-computer era, from time to time, white would pose problems here and white would win games, but now computers are actually easily holding this position with black. So that is not really causing any problem. But maybe bishop g5 move after knight c6, that is a bit more interesting for white, at least more chances to get some advantage, even though also black is doing okay here. First of all, there is a bit strange but not refuted at all the move bishop e6, which probably also leads to a normal position for black. A bit very strange play, because for some reason, for example, here the best move is considered to be a3. But in fact, then d takes c4. Actually, it's maybe even simpler. Nowadays, this seems to be a big problem for white in this line. After d takes c4, if d5, knight e5, black is doing fine. And if bishop takes c4, then actually taking the pawn on d4 is very dangerous, because you take on d4, long castle, e5, f4. And maybe black is holding here. There are lots of long force lines, but it's very dangerous. So that's why after bishop takes c4, that was considered to be a sort of unpleasant for black, until the h6 move was found. And actually after h6, according to theory, again, black is perfectly fine. So normally white takes on f6, because I guess after bishop h4, first of all, probably queen takes d4 is already a much better version of the same story, even though maybe still white has some initiative. But even simple e6, knight f3, bishop e7, and this, including h6, bishop h4, is very important in this position for black, and black has no problems here. So that's why after h6, usually white takes on f6, but then simply ef6, knight f3, bishop d6, and here black is not worse at all. So there is nothing to catch, so to say, for white. So all in all, this system, this Panov attack, I think it's not too dangerous for black. I can also mention that there is also e6 move, also extremely solid for black, and it's not easy to find an advantage, to fight for some advantage with white. But at least here the game is not so direct. So let's say knight f3 and bishop e7 or bishop b4. Here there is a lot of theory. So this kind of typical position with isolated pawn, probably black has good chances to equalize. I think that is the main line, something like this black is playing. But at least this position I would consider playing with white, because at least white has some initiative. Black still needs a long time to get his bishop active from c8, and white can try here, even if with a very accurate play, again with the best moves, probably black equalizes here as well. Or there is bishop b4 also. So somehow it looks like not a very prosperous line, I think, for white to play Panov attack, because you need still to know a lot of theory. So because usually playing white, whether you're playing already the most dangerous lines, the main lines, whether you already play something where you don't need at least to know so much theory. So here the white's problem is that objectively, this is not too dangerous, and still you need to know a lot of theory with white here. So somehow doesn't look like a good deal, but still some players, they do it from time to time. They like playing it, but again, less and less. So now let's move to d4, d5. What are the options here? Well, not too many. If not to play knight c3 or knight d2 or e5. Lately, f3 move is becoming quite fashionable, and it's true. It's very interesting, actually. I think that the minus of this move is that it gives black quite a wide choice of, perfectly playable continuations, but at the same time, there is no clear, straightforward equality also. Yes, so f3, I expect that it's maybe will raise more and more popularity, this move, because the positions are very complicated here. Most of the moves black can, logical moves black can play here are, leading to such positions where it's difficult even to analyze and to have a clear verdict. So lots of possible options for both sides, very interesting positions. But again, I don't think it's a big problem when you're playing black. Anyway, if you are playing Caro defense and not, let's say, Petrov or e4, e5, then it means that you are ready. You have to be ready for kind of complicated, strategically complicated positions if they are not too bad. And here, definitely, they are not too bad for black. So, the most direct way for black to play is if he wants to equalize, let's say, with a preparation, move per move, so to say, with a direct play, this is d4, fe4, e5 here. White is playing knight f3, and it's quite important. Yeah, the problem is that after ed4, bishop c4, it seems that white has very powerful initiative, and it's not enough for black to equalize. That is the main idea of the move f3. Otherwise, this fe5 would equalize easily. After knight f3, actually, I don't like very much myself this system because it's very dangerous somehow. And I think that white's position is very healthy and natural in here, even though computers find in some ways to equalize here with black, if you analyze a lot and show some precision. Still, depends on your attitude toward openings. But when I don't like strategically the position, even if computer finds a very precise moves all the time and managing to equalize, somehow I don't feel comfortable playing it. But again, it's your choice. At least this is the most direct way of playing. And now there is a move bishop e6, strange move by the way, but also possible. For instance, the idea is that if knight c3, knight d7, and if d5, bishop g4, little strange play. Let's be honest. Bishop e6. Of course, the idea is that if knight takes e5, there is queen h4 check, obviously. And if white is trying to play just c3, then black is going knight d7, bishop d3, knight f6, followed by bishop d6. And according to the theory, it's more or less okay. Again, maybe computers are right. I would be happy with white in this position. I have my center, of course, white castles, black is playing bishop d6. I have my center healthy position. Yeah, it looks quite comfortable for white. Or another way of playing is bishop g4, and then let's say bishop c4, knight d7, white is playing c3, then castles. Black, needs to be very, very accurate, to avoid some immediate trouble, because let's say queen b3 is threatening. So he's playing whether b5, whether even bishop h5. I don't know. I mean, whatever computer says, but this line definitely I would consider playing with white. But so my advice would be to try to investigate other moves, even if they are not so straightforward, and maybe white has some options there, but they seem to be more prosperous from the practical point of view. For instance, even the move like e6. Here it's a strange line that almost any move is possible. Yeah, I mean, even very strange move e6 makes some sense already. Because f3, is also weakening a bit white's position. So in many, for instance, knight c3 now is supposed to be the main move, and bishop b4. So it's kind of strange French defense, the knight c3, bishop b4 variation. But the pawn on f3 is obviously not really helping white. But still, so now again, extremely rich position. Many moves are possible. I will just show you a couple of main lines according to theory and to computers. For instance, bishop f4 is one of the main moves. Don't ask me why. Knight e7, queen d3, b6, knight e2, bishop a6, queen e3, like this. Or another way of playing is white's, which computer prefers quite often to play queen d3, b6. That's the idea, yes, trying to go bishop a6 at some point, bishop e2, I don't know why, knight f6, e5, bishop a6, queen e3, knight d7. Takes, knight e2, let's say c5, bishop d2. It looks to me like a great Caro or great French defense for black, whatever you call it. I would be very happy with this position having black here. I think he's doing well, but computers are sometimes giving a small plus to white here. I don't see a reason. I mean, anyway, it's perfectly playable move e6. There are also some very strange moves like queen b6 even is possible. Just putting some pressure on the d4 pawn. And for instance, if knight c3, black is taken on e4. If fe, then e5 is already seems to work well. So white some takes on knight takes e4, for instance, bishop f5. So a very strange position, kind of strange version of this main line with knight d2, with f3 and queen b6 included. Who knows in whose favor it is? But anyway, also possible. And for instance, one of the best lines according to computer here is c3, e5, and now queen e2. And you see very strange play. Absolute, actually, mostly yet non-analyzed because there are too many options. So a lot of areas here for analysis, for your imagination, with both colors in the opening preparation. So yeah, I think there is a lot still to investigate in this f3 variation. And g6, by the way, also not a bad option at all. So the main theory goes knight c3, bishop g7, bishop e3, and now again queen b6. You see a typical idea. Queen d2 seems to be the main move, because if white plays rook b1, for instance, protecting this pawn, then some strange play starts, like e5, knight e2, or d4, fe4, e5, knight f3. I don't know. I mean, computer is given slightly better for white, equal always, so very complicated position. Well, a lot. I think it's playable for both sides with both colors. And or queen d2, which is supposed to be main line. Queen takes b2, rook b1, queen a3, e d5. So white is getting the pawn back. But after knight f6, white takes on c6, and white has a slight initiative, but a little bit maybe more pleasant position. But seems that black is also doing fine in general. Most of the time, black equalizes here. So all in all, this f3 system is I think it's even if it's becoming more and more popular, there are more and more games on f3, but there is still a lot to investigate. So I think it's a fully practically new territory now, and I don't think that it will be so dangerous if you are playing black that you will not actually know what to do against it. I doubt this will be the situation, but also with white, if you like a little bit kind of fresh positions, which is not without theory, up to move 40, some fourth lines, probably this is the line which you can choose. F3, it's definitely has its venom. So, and then talking about, so to say, sidelines, there is a very interesting so-called exchange variation of Caro. But here, compared to exchange variation of French, which is e5 after e6, which is really not too ambitious, this line is not so easy for black. I mean, you really need to know. Here there are not so many forced lines, but you need to understand this position. You need to know exactly how to set up your pieces here in order to equalize with black, because otherwise you can, with black you can get under kind of long-term positional pressure. So the system is serious. It's also now used by most of top players from time to time, at least, like Magnus Carlsen. I've played it myself also, bishop d3. So I know that it's not as kind of harmless as it was considered to be 20-30 years ago. So now, usually black is playing knight c6, c3, knight f6. This or that way it gets to this main position. But lately, black started also to invent some kind of tricky move orders. For instance, starting with knight f6, if h3, then g6. Maybe it's a little bit better version of the variations I'm going to show you later. Followed by bishop f5, and if c3, bishop g4. So actually the main idea of this variation, that black before playing e6 he needs to get out with his bishop. So and white is trying to do everything to stop that. So there is this knight f6, c3, bishop g4 before playing knight c6. So black wants to finish his development in such way that the bishop is not left on c8, looking at the beautiful but still, looking at the e6 pawn for half of the game. So that's an idea. And queen b3, queen c7. Now h3, for instance. And now for some reason, I don't know actually why, because I don't see what is really wrong with the bishop h5 move, honestly. But for some reason, mostly nowadays players playing bishop d7 here, and let's say knight f3, knight c6, castle e6. In general, I don't recommend you to play e6, having still the bishop, on c8 to d7, but let's say rook e1, bishop d6. But here black gained maybe a couple of tempis, because queen on b3 is not standing well. It would have been better on d1. And the bishop, because of that maneuver, is already on d7 instead of c8. So then I think black sometimes tries to go knight h5, knight f4. It might be perfectly playable for black. But also I'm not sure that white has anything special after bishop h5. In any case, it's an interesting move order. But normally black is playing knight c6, c3, knight f6. Queen c7 is also possible. I will not, go into all those small details. So you can check. Just wanted to tell you that pay attention on this move. If you don't like, for some reason, the line I'm going to show you now. But queen c7 is, it's an option. But normally knight f6. And now, the idea is that black just needs to get bishop g4, e6, bishop d6. He will have no problem whatsoever. So that is why, obviously, a move like knight f3, natural one, is totally harmless. Black is just playing bishop g4, and then already after h3, he doesn't have to take on f3. He can go to h5, followed by e6, bishop d6, no problem at all. That's why there are two moves. The old main line is bishop f4. But nowadays also h3 becomes quite popular, and it's true that it's a serious move. So let's start with h3. Here, the idea is, it's a very important point of the whole variation is to try to fight against black activating his bishop from c8, so covering the g4 square. Of course, it's losing a tempi in a way, because h3 is not that useful move. Let's say if black is playing e6. But anyways, I think that in general in these positions, playing e6, it might be okay under some circumstances, but you have to be very careful doing it, because, for instance, it depends very much if white manages to land with his knight on e5. For instance, here queen c7, queen e2, and white just wants to play knight e5, followed by knight d2, knight f3. Very easy, simple play for white. And probably black has his own chances here, but he needs to be very careful, because strategically the game, this position is quite dangerous with this bishop on c8. That's why after h3, there is an option to play e5. And again, computers are quite happy with it. I mean, assess this position as almost equal, but I don't like it so much. Playing knight f3, usually you take on d3, queen takes d3, and this position is, in my opinion, is not completely equal, and at least in any case, in practical sense, very nice and easy to play with white. There is an isolated pawn. And let's say if you imagine one day, and it's very possible that the black square bishops will be exchanged, then white will have a full control on the d4 square and have a stable plus. So that's why I think after h3, g6 is a good move. That's what I would recommend you to do. And now I think that is the main continuation now, actually, in modern theory. So, the idea is that if, let's say, white is playing knight f3, then bishop f5. So that is the idea. Actually, you shouldn't be worried about this, pawn structure, let's say, takes on f5, because, first of all, black hasn't castled yet, so he can use the g line to organize some attack. But most important, that he has this very nice e4 square the knight. So e6, knight e4, the knight will be very annoying once it lands on e4. And otherwise, if white just castles, then you get rid of, you exchange this bishop, and this is a very important strategical achievement for black, and usually this position is perfectly fine for black. That is already equal. White is very safe, still very solid and safe, but that type of position without the white square bishops, I wouldn't be already worried at all with black. So that's why nowadays sometimes white starts to play a very strange move, bishop e2. I don't think it's caused too many problems, but especially here, black also has queen c7 idea just to stop bishop f4. That's why I would rather recommend white already to play bishop f4 first, and after bishop f5, bishop e2, at least developing his bishop. But here, because if black is just playing the most logical moves like bishop g7, knight f3, castle, knight bd2, I wouldn't say that necessarily it's any better for white. Maybe not, maybe black is okay, but still maybe it's more comfortable to play with white, because bishop on g7 is, as you see, is not extremely active, to put it mildly. But I think that e6, this is a very that is something I would recommend you to play here. It's a little bit worrying, to leave the bishop on f5, because it can theoretically get lost. You can lose it if the knight would have been on d2, for instance, knight d2, and now white is already probably threatening just to trap the bishop, playing g4, bishop e4, f3. But h5, it seems that there is no way really for white to manage it, and this bishop on f5 is pretty active. I think that this is a very, very comfortable way for black to be fine, to equalize. For instance, after knight f3, there was I think a game Svidler-Ryazantsev. Svidler played queen b3 here, but actually bishop d6 is perfectly fine. You can sacrifice this pawn on b7 because black has a lot of initiative for that pawn. So knight f3, and now both bishop d6. Actually, knight e4 probably is also okay, or bishop d6, and then let's say bishop g5, bishop e7. There is no way you can use this. You can trap this bishop on f5, and then at least black has a good development, followed by knight e4, and probably equalizing rather comfortably. So the only thing I would like to note is that there is a queen c2 move, which is not so popular, but to me it makes sense, just trying to stop bishop f5. Of course, queen is not doing anything really on c2, is not standing better than on d1, so it's almost like losing a tempi, but at least stopping bishop f5. Now maybe already here e5 is working much better, because after d5, knight e5, you don't have knight f3, and probably that might be enough for black to equalize. Or another way of playing here is already bishop g7, knight f3, and something like this. One of the possible plans is like knight d7, then after both sides will castle, maybe black can quickly get e5. But queen c2 is possible, is interesting move. But all in all, I think h3, g6 is quite solid for black, and probably black should be able to solve all his opening problems. That's why bishop f4 is the main move. Now, of course, this g6 idea is much less powerful. First of all, it's a tempi, and secondly, even in those lines after bishop f5, bishop takes f5, gf5, actually, it's much better for white to have the pawn on h2 than on h3, because after rook g8, he would just play, you always have g3 simply. So here, I wouldn't recommend you already to do this, even just because of that, and probably white is a bit better here. So again, definitely, e6, knight f3 is not something, this is something white is aiming for in this variation, so that makes bishop g4 the best move in this position. And queen b3, that is the idea of white. Of course, knight f3, as you already know, that e6 followed by bishop d6 wouldn't cause the slightest problem. So queen b3. And now queen d7 is the main line. queen c8 also possible. Then black is not anymore trying to exchange later the black square bishop, but is trying to put bishop on e7. And then there were quite many games. I played myself with white against Ivanchuk here. Also, there was a game, Dingler and Carlson. It's perfectly playable for black, but white maybe keeps some initiative here. So main move is queen d7, but actually nowadays computers, they show this very strange move e5. There is, well, basically no logics in it. I don't understand why it is quite good, but actually they cannot find an advantage here for white on e5, but you need really to study it and to analyze with the engine, because this is totally unhuman way of playing. But it might be actually quite good. But I will leave it to you to decide after having some work, with the machine, because here definitely the game gets very strange, very tactical, and the comments or the conclusions of your engine will be much more valuable than mine here. But otherwise, queen d7 is a very solid choice, and I think it's actually enough for black to equalize here. Knight d2, e6, knight f3, bishop d6. Yeah, that's an important move. You can also take first on f3 and play bishop d6, but I don't see why to hurry, because, yeah, you can always take later back, because I think his knight e5, I think, is not dangerous. Simply black has queen c7 and he is doing fine. So bishop d6 takes on d6, queen takes d6, and what is very important, that queen takes b7 is black is doing fine here. After rook b8, queen a6 castles, he's just in time to create his counterplay in all lines. For instance, if white tries to protect this pawn, then rook b6 and e5, so black is just in time to create a very, very powerful counterplay. That's why probably the best move here for white is to castle. And black can play rook b6. Now if queen a4, he just takes on b2, and there is no problem whatsoever. So white is playing queen a3, and then queen takes a3, b takes a3. Well, this position is, well, it's pretty equal, I would say. Even a move like bishop f5, computer actually thinks that it's perfectly fine for black. Among other moves, okay, white is a pawn up, but his pawn structure is compromised, and this extra double pawn on a line, as you see, yeah, as you understand, it's not so relevant, Of course, it's still a pawn, but all in all, this weakness of the c3 pawn and of the pawn structure, it makes this extra, I would say, half pawn not really relevant in the sense of playing for advantage. I think this position is pretty equal. And then otherwise, castles, rook fe1. That is possible. I mean, yeah, it makes some sense, because white, again, very typical idea in this variation, white wants to put the knight on e5 and then slowly develop his play on the king side, probably by rook e3, rook e1, queen c2, and, potentially he can get some attack here. But objectively, it shouldn't cause too much problem to black. He just has to be a bit careful with this, not to allow knight e5, better if possible. For instance, queen c7 is an option, but maybe even just taking on f3 is fine. Knight takes f3, and now, again, if rook b8, knight e5 here, even if not much, but at least white can put some pressure, but that's why maybe queen c7 is more accurate. Then the idea is that after knight e5, you can already take on e5. And one of the possible plans here is for black is to try to push e5, actually, not necessarily b5, but of course that's also possible, rook b8, b5. Another plan is maybe at some point to try rook e8 and e5. And in general, black's position is extremely solid. He has no weaknesses, no bad bishop, white square bishop. So even if white has a nominal plus here, it's really not much. So yeah, nothing really to worry about here with black. But so all in all, in this variation, I think black is able to equalize in all lines, but he needs to know exactly what he's doing. And with white, it's a kind of nice, comfortable line if you like positional play to be, solid. Really, not too many force variations, very few force lines, actually quite easy line to play with white. A good choice. I mean, I think that nowadays grandmasters, many of them who are playing e4 facing Caro-Kann, they have it as a at least a kind of second weapon. Yeah, that you always can play a game, being a little bit better, maybe too little to pretend, for something real, but still safe, solid, slightly more comfortable position which you can play. By the way, you can have a look at my game. I think I managed in classical chess to beat Fabiano Caruana with this variation. I think in 2018, if I remember well, Kann there. So it's a line which is again, if you're playing Caro-Kann with black, you better really analyze it. I mean, analyze it in the sense, in strategical sense, and just be careful facing this line, because there are, if you are inaccurate, allow, for instance, 95, or somehow don't manage to get your bishop from c8, you can experience some problems. So now I think we finished this summary on the all sorts of lines which are not, not the main lines, side lines, but still I believe that some of them are quite serious and you need to know them. And maybe for the white players against Caro-Kann, some of you would like it and actually prefer playing, let's say, this exchange variation, or maybe third f3 or knight f3, knight c3. You would just have it as your main weapon in your opening repertoire. Why not? But now we are moving to the two most principal, or maybe simply most popular, because there is no evidence that those two moves like third d5 or third knight c3, d knight e4, that they are really better than those lines I've shown you right now. But at least they're more popular. There is more theory, and I would like to spend next two lessons explaining you what is the state of theory and what are the major strategical ideas in those variations.